We're bringing up the holographic schematics and outlining how Tony Stark goes from a genius weapons designer with no heart to Iron Man, a self-sacrificing superhero with a heart of gold. This is the entire Iron Man MCU timeline, finally explained. Consider it all the proof you need that Tony Stark has a heart. So let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? Tony Stark basically comes out of the womb a genius. At age 4, he builds a circuit board. At age 6, he builds a V8 engine. By 17 years old, he graduates summa cum laude at MIT, and seems poised to take over Stark Industries whenever his genius father Howard feels ready to pass the buck. Unfortunately, after Howard's assassination in 1991 by a brainwashed Bucky Barnes, who was working as a Winter Soldier, his partner Obadiah Stane takes over Stark Industries until Tony turns 21 and takes back his company. From there, it's a wild ride of building new technology and weapons for the American military for the next decade, while ticking off just about everyone in the scientific community. When the viewers officially meet Tony Stark in 2008's Iron Man, he's at a weapons exhibition in Afghanistan to showcase the Jericho, a missile system that uses repulsor technology to increase effectiveness.
For your consideration, the Jericho.
On the way back from a successful presentation, Tony is kidnapped by a terrorist organization known as the Ten Rings that wants him to build them their own Jericho missile. The explosive kidnapping leaves Tony with some shrapnel buried near his heart, kept temporarily at bay with the use of an electromagnet powered by a car battery. With his fellow captive, Ho Yinsen, Tony upgrades the electromagnet in his chest into an arc reactor to keep his heart safe. Then he builds his first suit of armor, the Mark I, a clunky mobile suit packed full of weaponry which he dons to escape the Ten Rings. Sadly, Ho Yinsen doesn't survive the escape. With his dying breath, he begs Tony to do something important with his life.
Thank you for saving me.
Don't waste it. Don't waste your life.
Nothing like a near-death experience and the tragic passing of a dude who saved your life to really shake up your core principles, huh?
Effective immediately, I am shutting down the weapons manufacturer division of Stark International.
Obadiah is against the decision, and so is Tony's best friend, Colonel James Rhodey Rhodes. Unfortunately, Tony's new conscience comes with a cost. The board of Stark Industries basically ousts Tony, and it turns out that Obadiah's been playing both sides, both in terms of the Stark Industries board and the global weapons market. He actually led the board's betrayal, and he's been selling Stark Industries tech to terrorist groups the whole time. Without actual control over Stark Industries, and knowing that plenty of his tech is already out in the world, Tony upgrades his Iron Man suit to be sleeker and more colorful, and embarks on a quest to take down any terrorist groups using his weapons. After a successful mission, Tony makes a plan with his secretary, Pepper Potts, to hack into Stark Industries and find out where the rest of his weapons have gone. However, Obadiah incapacitates Tony, steals the arc reactor in his chest, and places it in a suit of his own design that's inspired by Tony's first one. Only his is bigger. A lot bigger. Tony replaces his missing arc reactor with a prototype that is saved from the desert and suits up to battle against Obadiah's Ironmonger. He defeats Obadiah with some help from Pepper, of course, saves the day, and then announces to the world that there's no secret identity needed.
I am Iron Man.
While Tony's on stage admitting that he really is Iron Man, half a world away, Anton Vanko passes away after telling his son Ivan that Tony's life should have been his. Ivan uses an old blueprint of the arc reactor designed by his father and Howard Stark in order to build a replica of the super battery. 6 months later, Tony's turned his newfound superhero celebrity into an excuse to bring back the Stark Expo, as well as take credit for basically every good thing that's happened in America since Iron Man appeared. Predictably, Tony's subpoenaed to appear in front of Congress to defend his right to bear the world's biggest armory.
If your priority was actually the well-being,
my priority is to get the
American
Iron Man
citizen.
weapon turned over to the people of the United States of America.
Well, you can forget it.
Tony talks his way out, but he learns that Justin Hammer and Hammer Industries are trying to fill the void left by Stark Industries after they left the weapons game, which includes trying to copy the Iron Man suit, and failing pretty spectacularly. Meanwhile, Tony's got problems of his own. He's suffering from palladium poisoning from the continued use of his arc reactor. Tony names Pepper the new CEO of Stark Industries, while Ivan finishes his arc reactor-powered Whiplash outfit. Ivan attacks Tony during a race in Monaco, but Tony's able to suit up and defeat him. Justin Hammer gets Ivan out of jail, and the two agree to team up to take down Tony Stark and Stark Industries.
You need my resources. Someone behind you, a benefactor. I'd like to be that guy.
Suffering from palladium poisoning and flushed from his victory over Whiplash, Tony goes off the deep end during his birthday party. He puts on the Iron Man suit as a party trick and starts blasting away, only for Rhodey, who's looking a teensy bit different this time around, to show up in another one of Tony's suits to try and stop him.
Get out.
Tony and Rhodey battle it out to a draw, and Rhodey flies off to give the War Machine suit to the US military. Hammer gets the job of outfitting it with new weapons, while Nick Fury, the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., gives Tony a firm talking to about how he needs to grow up and figure out how to fix his palladium poisoning. After viewing a heartfelt recording from his father, Tony figures out that Howard had designed a replacement for palladium in the 70s, but lacking the technology to build the new element, he buried the design in the schematics for the Stark Expo.
What is and always will be my greatest creation is you.
Tony discovers it, builds a new element, and upgrades his suit just in time to interrupt Yvonne's master plan. He's built a fleet of Iron Man-esque drones for Hammer Industries that only he controls, as well as remote control over Rhodey's War Machine armor. With the help of Happy Hogan and Natasha Romanoff, who had been working undercover at Stark Industries under the name Natasha Rushman, Tony frees Rhodey from Yvonne's control, and the two of them defeat Whiplash together. With the day saved, Rhodey keeps the War Machine armor, while Tony accepts a role as a consultant for the Avengers Initiative from Nick Fury. Tony next appears in the post-credit scene for 2008's The Incredible Hulk, which takes place around the same time as the events of Iron Man 2, telling General Thaddeus Ross that a team is being put together. That team is the Avengers, which Tony officially joins in 2012's The Avengers, after Loki steals the Tesseract from Project Pegasus. Tony teams up with Captain America and Black Widow to capture Loki in Germany. After the team nabs Loki, Thor shows up to scuffle with Cap and Iron Man before agreeing to team up against whatever Loki's plotting. The team heads to the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, where Tony and Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, get to work analyzing Loki's mind-controlling scepter. Loki's henchmen, including a hypnotized Hawkeye, ambush the helicarrier, freeing the Trickster Guard and sending the Avengers team into disarray. The team comes back together just in time for a massive battle in New York, centered around Stark Tower, where Loki's attempting to open a rift to bring in an invading force of alien Chitauri warriors. The Avengers stem the tide, the World Security Council launches a nuclear missile, and Iron Man drags a missile through the wormhole into the Chitauri fleet, seemingly sacrificing his life to destroy the invaders. Luckily, he's totally fine. Kinda.
Alright, hey. Alright, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
In Iron Man 3, which takes place 6 months after the Avengers, it's revealed that Tony Stark is definitely not fine. He's nearly crippled with anxiety following his excursion through the wormhole and the Battle of New York. In the meantime, he's dealt with his manic energy by investing in Damage Control, an organization originally created by S.H.I.E.L.D. to store dangerous artifacts, and spending his free time building dozens of Iron Man suits in case he ever needs more firepower for a future Earth-shattering crisis. One obvious crisis that doesn't take long to pop up is the Mandarin, a mysterious terrorist leader who's been supposedly instigating bombings throughout the world.
You know who I am. You don't know where I am. And you'll never see me coming.
After Happy Hogan is injured in one of Mandarin's bombings, Tony calls the Mandarin out, which leads to Tony's house getting blown up. Tony flees to Tennessee, where he meets Harley Keener, a young boy with a gift for engineering. Together with Harley, Tony fixes up his suit and learns where the Mandarin is hiding. Unfortunately, there's a bigger game at work. The Mandarin is just an actor playing a part designed by Aldrich Killian and Maya Hansen to give a narrative for their failed extremist tests. After unraveling a conspiracy involving the vice president and Killian's plot to kill the president, Tony, Rhodey, and Pepper are able to defeat Killian and save the day. Tony undergoes heart surgery, so he no longer needs the arc reactor in order to live, and seemingly retires from the hero business. Haha, yeah right. Tony Stark doesn't actually end up retiring, since he's right back in the Avengers lineup in 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron, on the hunt for Hydra leader Baron Strucker. Iron Man flies into the castle where he's hiding and gets minds out by Wanda Maximoff, one of two superpowered siblings groomed by Strucker for his evil plans. While under Wanda's spell, Tony sees a vision of his fellow Avengers dead, and a Chitauri army headed for Earth. Once he wakes up, Tony does what he always does when confronted with a possibly terrible future. He builds a suit of armor. This time, however, it's not a literal suit. Instead, Tony wants to build, quote, a suit of armor around the world, which is basically an artificial intelligence that can protect Earth from anything. Tony and Bruce crack the code on making it, and together, they create the AI dubbed Ultron, with the help of the Mind Stone and Loki's scepter. Yeah, that's when everything pretty much falls apart.
Who sent you?
I see a suit of armor around the world.
Ultron.
in the flesh.
Determining that human beings are the problem with the Earth, Ultron tries to destroy the world with the help of the Strucker children, Wanda and Pietro. The Avengers show up to stop him, of course, but Wanda unleashes another one of her telepathic attacks against nearly the entire team, which leads to the Hulk going on a rampage that only Tony and his Hulkbuster armor can stop. After that, it all comes to a head in the fictional country of Sokovia, as Tony builds Vision, yet another artificial intelligence, using the Mind Stone and his Jarvis program as a personality matrix. Together, the Avengers and Vision save the day. Ultron is blown up, and Tony quits the team at the end of the film.
I will miss you, Tony.
Yeah? Well, it's time for me to tap out.
While the Avengers are doing their business, Tony's trying to cultivate a new breed of entrepreneurs by paying off the tuition fees of every single MIT student in 2016's Captain America: Civil War. His generosity comes under a dark cloud though, when he runs into Miriam, the mother of a young man who died in Sokovia during the Ultron event.
His name was Charlie Spencer. You murdered him. In Sokovia.
She reads Tony the riot act about his lack of responsibility, and when General Ross later shows up to suggest that the Avengers come under the official purview of the United Nations, Tony supports it. Steve Rogers, however, is very much against the Sokovia Accords, and the two men struggle to reconcile their differences. Bucky, the Winter Soldier, is freed from custody by Helmut Zemo as part of an extremely complicated plan to avenge the death of Zemo's own family in Sokovia. Steve gathers a team to help Bucky evade capture, while Tony gets his own team together, consisting of Black Widow, War Machine, Vision, Black Panther, and Spider-Man. A scuffle with Steve's team at the airport turns serious when War Machine is crippled by an errant blast from Vision, which sends Tony into serious mode. He arrests Steve's team, minus Bucky and Cap who've escaped, and pursues Cap and Bucky to Siberia alone. Zemo's plan comes to a head when Tony discovers that his parents actually died at Bucky's hand rather than in a car accident. After a brutal battle, Cap and Bucky escape, minus Cap's shield, but Cap gives Tony a cell phone with his number on it if a time comes that they ever need to reunite against a greater threat. Spoiler alert, they will. 2 months after the events of Captain America: Civil War, Tony's biggest headache is fending off Peter Parker's desire for his mentorship. Peter's increasingly desperate to get Tony's attention once a younger hero discovers that the Vulture, a weapons-dealing supervillain, has been selling high-tech weaponry he scavenged from the wreckage of the Chitauri invasion. Iron Man bails Spider-Man out twice, first with the help of a remote-controlled drone, and the second time in person, trying to convince Peter to slow down and be a local hero before looking to join the Avengers. After the second time, when Iron Man's intervention is the only thing that keeps the Staten Island ferry from sinking, Tony confiscates the high-tech suit he'd given Peter.
I just wanted to be like you.
And I wanted you to be better. Okay, it's not working out. I'm gonna need the suit back.
Even without the suit, Peter can't help but be a hero, and he ultimately stops the Vulture from stealing a shipment of Stark tech. As a reward, Tony gives Peter the offer he's been begging for, a chance to join the Avengers and get a brand new iron suit.
When you're ready, why don't you try that on? And I'll introduce the world, the newest official member of the Avengers, Spider-Man.
Peter surprisingly turns him down, and Tony, looking for a way to distract the reporters from an announcement that's suddenly no longer happening, proposes to Pepper Potts. When Avengers Infinity War begins, Tony is happily married to Pepper and having dreams about their child. Their touchy-feely small talk is interrupted when Doctor Strange arrives to request Tony's help in repelling the invasion of Thanos' Black Order, who had come to Earth in search of the Infinity Stones that Thanos needs to wipe out half of the universe.
Dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards.
Strange and his Time Stone are kidnapped by Thanos' henchman, Ebony Maw. Tony Stark and Spider-Man, newly decked out in his Iron Spider outfit, hitch a ride on Maw's spaceship. After freeing Strange and blasting Maw into space, Tony, Peter, and Doctor Strange head to the planet Titan to prep for Thanos' pursuit. There, they run into Guardians of the Galaxy members Peter Quill, Drax, Mantis, and Nebula. A plan is hatched, and then Thanos arrives to turn that careful plan into ashes. With the rest of his allies down, Tony uses the full force of his nanotechnology-powered suit to draw a single drop of blood from Thanos before the Mad Titan stabs him through the abdomen with Tony's own sword. Doctor Strange gives up the Time Stone to save Tony's life, leaving Thanos to quickly complete his Infinity Gauntlet and snap half the universe into non-existence. Tony survives, but Peter Parker turns to dust in his arms, and only he and Nebula are left alive on Titan, seemingly with no way home. After Thanos' devastating victory, Nebula and Tony leave Titan in Quill's ship, but they don't have the supplies or the fuel to actually make it all the way back to Earth. Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, intercepts their ship and gives them a lift home. Once he arrives, Tony realizes that his 50-50 odds of everyone in his life surviving came out pretty well. Pepper, Happy, and Rhodey all survived the snap. For the next 5 years, the only thing on Tony's mind is building a life for himself, Pepper, and their young daughter, Morgan, as Tony finally manages to retire the way he kept promising he would. Or at least he retires until Scott Lang reappears from the quantum realm with a theory that they could go back in time and save everyone who died because of Thanos.
What if there was a way that we could enter the quantum realm at a certain point in time, but then exit the quantum realm at another point in time, like before Thanos?
After some hemming and hawing, Tony builds a working time machine model, rejoins the Avengers, returns Cap's shield, and organizes a strike team of the surviving Avengers to go back in time to retrieve the Infinity Stones and build a new gauntlet before Thanos destroys them in the present. The mission goes smoothly, and Tony even gets a chance to have a heart-to-heart with his dad in the past.
Howard, everything's gonna be all right. Thank you for everything.
From there, all it takes is one snap of Hulk's mighty fingers to bring everyone back. However, a past version of Thanos battles his way to the future, and only Tony Stark, by sacrificing his life to use a new Infinity Gauntlet, can finally get rid of him. Tony Stark gives his life to erase Thanos and his world-conquering army from the past, finally making good on Ho Yinson's plea that he not waste his own life. He dies, and most of the MCU lives on. But just because Tony Stark dies doesn't mean that his story dies with him. Tony leaves 3 extremely qualified members of the next generation to succeed him. His daughter, Morgan Stark, takes after him in a number of ways, and a genius-level intellect seems to run in the family. His young mentee, Peter Parker, grew up with a hero worship of Tony Stark and spends most of Spider-Man Far From Home trying to live up to the legend of Iron Man. Finally, Harley Keener, the young boy that Tony related to in Iron Man 3, appears at Tony's funeral, signifying that the Marvel Cinematic Universe hasn't forgotten Tony's first young protege. Even before the next generation is able to take on the weight of the legacy he leaves them, Rhodey and Pepper both have high-tech battle suits and a knack for doing the right thing. Just because Tony Stark has passed into the great beyond doesn't mean that the legacy of Iron Man won't continue to reverberate throughout the MCU going forward. And remember, there's no need to cry for Tony. He knew the hero gig.
Part of the journey is the end.
Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.